Hey, so Dexter's back and so am I in my usual place. If you saw last week I was in a different place, don't worry about it, I'm back. So Dexter Original Sin episode 4 titled Fender Bender is out and I'm here to talk about it. This video is going to be kind of a spoiler-filled recap and review of all the scenes going through this whole episode and all the little details that I picked up on anyway, and what I thought about them. So if that sounds of interest to you, you're in luck because that's what's to follow. The episode begins with "Everybody Dance Now." You know the song. Hopefully I don't get a copyright strike because that sounded so identical to the original. But anyway, along with that song, we also get a visualization of some roller skaters as they're wearing like neon colors, like pinks and yellows and stuff like that. And they look like they've come straight out of the Barbie movie or something. And they look real lame and I love it because it's like 90s cringe and stuff. But of course, this being Dexter, it's not going to stick to roller skating and happy times for too long because they quickly come across a dead body hanging from above. But I gotta say, this intro felt very much like an NCIS or CSI type thing though. Like a bit of one of those lame cop shows that your dad watches, you know, where they find a dead body and then they investigate a bit, then they find the killer by the end of the episode. You know, it's a murder of the week kind of thing. The thing is though that Dexter is so much more as a show, and I kind of felt a bit funny and weird, you know, like Dexter doing its own version of these kinds of lame shows, you know what I mean? I'm like, what is this? This is a kind of weird tone. Like, I kind of like it because it leans into 90s cringe, but I'm also like, this feels like CSI and it feels lame to me. But don't worry too much because things quickly shift into gear with our main Miami Metro cops on the scene within full view of the public and media in a frenzy. The body though, it's the fucking kid Jimmy Powell, the judge's kid, the kid that we've been seeing some glimpses of being abducted. That kid is dead already. He's dead, so I'm like, well, I guess there's no saving him. Right as Sarah Michelle Gellar's character Tanya Martin, who by the way is a character I keep feeling like I have to introduce in that way because she wasn't in the original show, so if I just say Tanya Martin, it's like, who the fuck's that? I don't know, maybe that's an insecurity of mine or something, but I keep like specifically saying it's Sarah Michelle Gellar's character Tanya Martin. But anyway, she says grab the bag, child size, and things just got bleak real fucking quick. But then again, this is Dexter and we are not new to bleakness within this show. But the first notable point though is that the dead body of the kid bothers Dexter in particular. It bothers everybody around, but Dexter in particular. From the very first episode of the original series though, we knew that this was part of Dexter as a character himself though.
Never, ever kids. Why? I have standards.
But it's still interesting to reiterate the fact that a self-proclaimed psychopath like him still struggles to see even a kid being killed. Anyway, Harry notices this as well and is kind of delighted because, you know, this is a sign of Dexter showing normal empathy and human feeling. So he's kind of stoked.
You seem kind of psyched.
No, I'm bummed. But I wasn't bummed. I was stoked.
So he sends Dexter off to intern/investigate a second body discovered across town at the same time, along with LaGuardia, who's also been ordered by Patrick Dempsey's Aaron Spencer. This is another character I keep feeling like I have to introduce. Anyway, to go to the same place. And that place that they go to is someplace called Coconut Grove at Alice Wainwright Park, dubbed Prostitute Park. Yay. LaGuardia herself is not super in favor of being ordered to go to this crime scene instead though, dubbing it as something that is slightly less important, which he argues back though that no one life is more valuable than the next. A direct quote from herself. Now, this is kind of an interesting tiny little moment that I don't think the show really focused on, but it said a lot to me. I think it's interesting that she does believe in those words that every life is valuable and she does have that empathy, I think. But I can also cynically see how dealing with the murder of a child appears more important and would be good for her career. And that's always been the path that she leads throughout the original series as well, being a character who feels like she's being pushed into having to play the political game to further her career. And I think that's part of what this is as well. Maybe I'm looking too much into it, but I feel like her looking at, well, dead kid or dead prostitute or whoever it is and it ended up there. It's like, I want to go with the sort of important case for myself. And I feel like that's sort of how she looks at things. I find it really interesting that she's willing to give up sort of a piece of her moral compass there in order to sort of do the more important work, if that makes sense. Anyway, upon arriving at the crime scene, Dexter speaks to some cop named Clark who drove him there. And I didn't think this was going to be like an important recurring character, but he shows up like numerous times in this episode. So maybe he's going to be a big player later on. I don't know. But the point that Dexter basically gets out of this conversation is that every cop remembers their first time seeing a dead child. It's a common trauma that a lot of them share. Clark says that he was able to find peace by striving to one day become a detective to help oppose more similar situations, and Dexter's version of this is killing baddies. And Dexter acknowledges that if anyone deserves it, it's the person who killed Jimmy Powell. Anyway, Dexter further approaches the crime scene now, announcing his arrival like an absolute nerd, and LaGuerta's first words to him are, "What are you, like 12? Unimpressed." I found that kind of funny given that during the first, starting out of the original series, she's introduced as a character who's kind of flirting with Dexter and likes him, and that's something that obviously didn't continue in the seasons to come. But here, she's very unimpressed at the start and is obviously going to go on to like him a bit more throughout the series, so it's just kind of a funny little difference there. Anyway, this turns out to be an independent case for Dexter though, where he's sort of more in charge than he was previously before. He's not in charge, but he gets a little moment in the spotlight to explain what his theories are, meaning it's a chance to prove himself here. We then get a Will Graham in Hannibal-style reimagining of how the murder took place from the point of view of Dexter. It's a little derivative of, well, like I said, Hannibal, but it's still cool to see a slightly different creative choice. He deduces through this, though, that the victim was strangled and the killer was confident, facing the victim, with the intention of feeling the life leave the victim's body. That was the important part. Another thing to note is that there were track marks on the victim too. Anyway, after listening to Dexter's sort of theory there, LaGuerta immediately dismisses this as guessing game bullshit though. But upon finishing up the investigation and starting to transport the body though, one of the cops hesitantly declines carrying it, saying he doesn't want to get AIDS. A reminder that we're set in 1991 here and the AIDS epidemic was in full swing, I think anyway. I looked it up and it says that it started in 1981 to the early 90s, and also Freddie Mercury died in November 1991, and this show is set in 1991, so I'm pretty sure it was in full swing there. But either way, it still was something weighing on people's minds at the time and causing things like homophobia and whatnot. And this probably isn't super important to the plot, maybe, but it adds context and world building around the characters and story that we're so familiar with, and it's just that little bit of extra effort from a writing perspective that I really appreciate. Anyway, cut to Deb and her friend Sophia now discussing a trip they're taking to the beach with their volleyball team. Sick. Whoa, more high school drama crap. But oh no, Harry took the car, or truck, as Americans call it, I guess. I reserved that term for 18-wheelers or whatever, massive vehicles, but Americans call anything slightly bigger than a normal car a truck. But anyway, regardless, Harry took the vehicle. Oh no! But anyway though, alternatively, it doesn't matter because they decide to just catch the bus. Whoa! What a turn of events. But oh no, the bully girls have a car and they take it and they make fun of them, saying there's no more room for them in the car. Oh no! What a crazy series of events. Again, I like Deborah as a character and I think that the actor's doing a good job embodying the role, but her stories here are just so uninteresting to me so far, this high school drama bullshit. I don't care if she has a car or if she's taking a bus somewhere. It's just this isn't what Dexter's about. But anyway, instead of taking the bus to the beach, Deborah announces that she has a better idea, and they show up to meet a Blockbuster employee, showing the store, Blockbuster, which both soothed and hurt my soul to see nowadays, My nostalgia for that place and renting DVDs and stuff, it's so nice, but it's also I know those days are long gone. Anyway, the reason that they're going to meet this random Blockbuster employee is to get drugs from him. Fuck a duck, that's awesome, Deborah says, when she's trying it just on the street, which I don't know if that's normal behavior or not. But anyway, this of course is continuing that charm with Deb's classic filthy mouth, or entirely, utterly putting off those fans who find it cringe. I sit somewhere in the former. I kind of like it. I think it, stays in character and stuff. This is how Deb speaks in the original series. Why wouldn't she do it here? But I can see how it feels like the show is trying a bit too hard. I don't know. Something else I wanted to talk about between scenes here that I forgot to talk about in previous videos though, is how I find it interesting that for the first time in this series, Dexter's voiceover narration isn't so much an inner monologue, but a retelling from a place of hindsight. This isn't a present tense in the moment stream of consciousness like we'd seen before, but a story being told from someone who knows the answers already and the outcomes and all that stuff. It's maybe not that different, but it's interesting to think about that this is a Dexter who is basically controlling how the story is being told, and it's not so much thoughts coming out in the moment. Anyway, back at Miami Metro, Harry and Camilla talk about how Dexter handled the body earlier, but more importantly, Harry wants to double check that Dexter was stricken from Laura Moses records, seemingly for nobody but us, the audience, really, because this doesn't really feel like a supernatural conversation to me. Because the characters already know what happened. They know that they struck Dexter from the records. They know this stuff. They've had these conversations before, but it just feels like they both got in front of the camera to say these things unnaturally so that we know things, It's exposition exposition, not done super well in my opinion. But it doesn't matter because it's flashback time! Flashback time! Flashback Bobby and flashback Harry are headed to meet up with 70s flashback Laura. Harry's starting to hesitate using her as an informant though, saying how the guys they're trying to get are psychopaths. And Bobby basically calls it as like catching feelings. He can see that something's going on between them two. They're starting to get a little too close, but casually just advises to keep it professional. Anyway, upon knocking on Laura's door though, she is in a struggle with loud and messy kids, being of course Dexter and Brian, and says she can't go to whatever the crime meeting or whatever she has to go to is. Harry suggests, hey, I'll look after them. And so we get the very first time that Harry looks after Dexter, which I don't know if I like, because this basically confirms that Harry has somewhat of a relationship with Dexter before he saves him from the shipping container following Laura's death. And I just don't know how I feel about that. Maybe I'm forgetting exactly how it played out in the original series through flashbacks and stuff, but I always thought of it as it was sort of an on-the-fly decision, like, oh no, this poor kid, I'm gonna save him. It wasn't, oh no, Dexter, this kid I kind of know, I'm gonna save him. Does that make sense? I feel like there's an important distinction there, but maybe I'm forgetting exactly how it was explained to us in the original. But to me, it just feels a little bit weird, and I don't know. I feel like it's better if they don't have a relationship, you know? Even if it's not that deep, this does suggest that they at least know each other in some small way. Harry and Dexter, that is. Anyway, later, still within the flashback, we see kid Brian Moser ripping off the tails of lizards, which is just horrible, by the way. Like, what a little cunt. That's just like, come on. I know this is how real serial killers start and everything. I get it. It's an important distinction, and given the subject material, this is stuff we have to deal with. We can't shy away from it because that would be unrealistic. I get it, but I'm still watching this little kid just torture these animals, and I'm like, this is unpleasant bullshit, and I kind of hate it, you know? Whereas it also then shows Dexter inversely being shown to be upset about the death of a lizard. And of course, this violent behavior is also something that we know Dexter would do too. And so, to me, this felt a little bit disingenuous. This felt a little bit manipulative from the show's point of view, showing Brian in such a bad light while showing Dexter as like, oh, this cutesy little angel. But then again, if you actually kind of think about it, I do think that maybe the point of this is to show that Dexter's not a psychopath yet. It's always been a part of the show that he was made into a killer by witnessing the traumatic death of his mother and not born into being that way. Whereas Brian didn't witness that traumatic death, but was inversely born into being a psychopath. And I feel like that is a really interesting difference between them that possibly this scene was trying to highlight there. Anyway, back to present day now. Dexter is back at Miami Metro and is looking through police records, hoping to find an outlet to deal with his feelings, which are basically looking for evidence so he can safely kill someone. And by the way, he used the word feelings here, coming from Mr. Dexter No Feelings Morgan, by the way. He always goes on and on about how he has no feelings, how he's not a human and all this stuff, but we see him emote all the time, from the original series to this to New Blood, all that stuff. He's always emoting. He has emotions. He gets mad. He's awkward. I don't know. He has all sorts of emotions. Maybe awkward isn't an emotion, but you get what I mean. Anyway, back at the Morgie Morgan household though, Dex arrives home showing Harry the records he'd been going through and that he needs to not suppress his deadly urges. If he bottles it up, the feelings will come out in ways he can't control, he says. So, the person he has in mind to go after this time is some guy called Mad Dog. What a name, Mad Dog! Someone who has no criminal record since coming to Miami and appearing squeaky clean, but who was previously suspected of being a contract killer for the mob and a person of interest in dozens of mob-related murders and has a legend of supposedly maybe having killed 200 plus people. But his biggest crime? Being played by Cypher from The Matrix. Oh no! He didn't want to leave The Matrix and go to the sad, realistic place and fight the machines and eat sludge. He wanted to stay in the fake fantasy world and enjoy his steak, which, if you really think about it, if you stay within The Matrix and think everything's real and still feel the sensations and taste the steak and like it and everything, it's kind of real to an extent, really. I'm kind of with him there. I want the steak. Fuck fighting the machines. Give me the steak. This has gone entirely off topic. Anyway, this is an interesting person to go after, in my opinion, though, this Mad Dog guy, because sure, he is a contract killer or hitman or whatever, and of course, by nature, that makes him a murderer, but it's kind of a different side of the coin from serial killers who do it for creepy pleasure, you know? For these types, it's all business. It still fits the code, but it's just a bit of a different target than usual. I'm not exactly saying, no, Dexter, don't kill the guy who's killed lots of people for money. Oh no! Like, I don't have an issue with it. good, but I just kind of find it like a point of interest, you know? Anyway, Harry says he can't approve the kill without hard evidence though, before Deb erupts the convo spouting off about how unfair it is that Harry took the car earlier, but also letting him know that she made captain of the volleyball team. Yay! More high school shit. Anyway, Harry basically says what everyone watching's opinion is, in that nobody cares about your dumb nothing bullshit compared to the serious murdery stuff happening. You know, like that's kind of how we feel, but him being her dad does make it that quite a bit different from us thinking that, you know? You can't say that being her dad. So this of course causes major conflict between the two, and well, I actually like this moment because it highlights how she feels in competition constantly. With Dexter, with dead kids, with various police work, with whatever. Harry never paid enough attention to Deborah, and basically this shows why and how she acts out like she does. It actually is quite realistic, and to me it does add a lot to her character. She feels neglected, and you know, you're not exactly gonna be like this well-behaved fucking like doing everything right kid when you're in that situation. It's a shitty situation, and it makes me feel sad for Deborah. Anyway, cut to the docks where Dexter is tailing Mad Dog now, going undercover as someone interested in being taken out on the boat with his lame southern accent that Michael C. Hall did all the time in the original series and always made me laugh.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I saw Freebo again. No, man, I'm not coming in. Yeah, I know. I'd order me a rum and coke. I'll be there in 10.
Then he heads off to his house to find potential evidence. Mad Dog's got a Mad Dog bachelor pad with a room set up with fancy guitars and ocean-related decorations. He's just got a lot of cute things around. He's an old retired man with lots of shit. But Dexter finds a shredded up picture of a potential less cute thing, being a previous target that he may or may not have killed, suggesting that perhaps he hasn't retired in Miami after all and has still been on the job all this time. This is far from hard evidence though. So later Dexter tapes the shredding back together and figures out the man's identity to be Omar Reyes, who was an accessory to money laundering and mail fraud, low-level blue-collar crimes, but who's been appointed to court the following week as a snitch willing to testify against the mob, suggesting that he's still alive and is in fact Mad Dog's next victim, not a previous one like Dexter had assumed. And it's here where I gotta say that for one, I hope I explained that stuff correctly, but for two, even if I didn't, I don't think that these details are really that important for Dexter's story going on. Sure, he did some bad things or whatever, and he's gonna tell in court maybe, or something like that as of my understanding. The thing is, I don't really care about that aspect of this story at all, to be honest, and I think a big part of that is that they keep mentioning oh, the mob and stuff, but we don't know any characters from that, and it just makes it all feel a little pointless, unless we're gonna meet these characters, you know, in episodes to come, which, hey, that's probably not unlikely, so maybe it's all gonna fall into place soon enough. But as of now, I'm like, so what that this dude's a snitch or whatever? I don't give a fuck. But basically it proves, or at least shows, that it's very likely that Mad Dog is still a player in the killing game and is going to be coming after this guy. So Dexter brings this new info to Harry, but who doesn't want Dexter to take this case, as Mad Dog is a professional hitman, and he doesn't think Dexter has what it takes to go one-on-one with him. Akin to how he wouldn't be able to go toe-to-toe with Michael Jordan, he says, either. And Dex responds, who? And at first I thought that's because maybe he just started in the NBA and was a brand new player that people weren't aware of yet, and so Dexter wouldn't have known who he was, but maybe Harry was really paying attention to basketball in the early 90s, was really into it or something like that. But no, it turns out I actually looked it up and Michael Jordan started in the NBA in the 80s, so I guess he was a thing by that time, but this line was just more to show that Dexter's kind of a dork and doesn't give a shit about pop culture because he's a weirdo or whatever. But then again, to be fair, I also wouldn't know this at the time, I'm guessing. I don't know shit about basketball. I probably wouldn't have known who that was, and nowadays in the modern day, ask me to name a basketball player. Michael Jordan? Kobe. That's the end of the list. Anyway, after an argument that hardly goes anywhere, Harry accepts Dexter's decision almost immediately, and I'm kind of like, really? It's kind of like in the first episode where he basically was just like, maybe you shouldn't kill Nurse Mary. Never mind, just do it. All right, I don't care. Go ahead, you little scamp. It kind of seems like Harry keeps going back and forth, topsy-turvy on I don't think you should kill people, Dexter. But then when he asks, can I kill this guy? He's just kind of like, yeah, all right, whatever. Anyway, cut back to Miami Metro now, and we learn that Jimmy Powell was killed with an ice pick to the back of the neck by a supposed professional. They also point out that the nub where the missing finger used to be was cauterized by a cigarette lighter, and that his stomach was full of Sunny Smile snacks. Again, I don't know what the significance of that exactly is, but it's pointed out that this was the only thing that he was fed while abducted, and that you can basically find these snacks at any grocery store, so it doesn't exactly give away the killer or anything like that. Anyway, this is all before Becca, Aaron Spencer's ex-wife, shows up, complaining complaining that he's not doing enough for Nikki, his son, who needs to be taken to soccer because she's busy with her own stuff, which happens to be aerobics class, which in comparison to everything going on doesn't sound that important, you know? But then again, she's her own person, she's got shit to do. So, you know, that's valid. Anyway, the point is, this is typical ex-wife with a kid drama where she's getting remarried to some guy named Nelson and, you know, Patrick Dempsey, Aaron Spencer, I mean, he's too busy for his own son while he leaves everything to her. But he's kind of in a bind when his work involves dead children and stopping criminals, so it kind of feels like there's no winning. You know, like if I learned anything from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, and Aaron Spencer, he kind of has great responsibility at this job, you know, great power at this job. He's a higher up. So it's like, you know, do you give up like trying to help people and save people and stuff? Or, you know, do you, I don't know, neglect your kid, I guess? Both options seem bad, you know, you want to be able to do it all, but I guess you can't. And that's just like an inherent problem within these sorts of people's lives, I guess. And that's a realistic issue. That being said, that doesn't make it exactly original. This is the kind of storyline we've seen time and time again in cop movies and shows and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say it's the most compelling ever, but it's, you know, enough character development that like I'm kind of on board with, you know what I mean? Then again, seemingly only fast the audience since the characters would already know all the info that we're told. There's an argument scene between the two where they basically exposit certain information to us, including that Becca was the one who decided to leave and blow the family up while he stayed faithful. Again, though, we can infer that this was all due to him being too busy at work, and that's what led to all this. Again, typical cop drama, divorce drama bullshit. You know, not to say it's bad, but again, it's just far from original. Meanwhile, while that's taking place, Dexter talks to the son, Nikki, outside the office talking about a game he's playing, which is Sonic the Hedgehog, I guess on the original Game Boy it looks like, which came out, I looked it up, in 1989. So, it fits the timeline! That makes sense, yes, not like in Madam Web when the guy on the train was shown to be playing a PSP or something in 2003 when it didn't come out until 2006 or something like that. Or was it a phone? I don't know. He had some device that wouldn't come out for a few years and it's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. What are you doing, Madam Web? Are you a bad movie? I don't actually hate Madam Web as much as everybody else. I probably shouldn't say that, but I don't. It's kind of like the Terminator with Spider-Man. There's some cool stuff in there, even if it's also kind of bad and dumb. Anyway, now we cut to Dexter with melons pressed against his chest to look like he has boobs. Dexter has boobs. How quirky of him. Anyway, the point of this scene though is to show us certain information, like that the victim that was strangled earlier was named Blake Kirsten, whose sister told Clark they grew up together, but Blake has been estranged from his family since he was 17 when they found out that he was gay. He also has some minor crimes on his record suggesting he had a bit of a troubled life after being kicked out of home and before being killed. Anyway, Dexter is here with his melons, I guess, or cantaloupes or whatever, to show his working out of how the murder took place, demonstrating dropping these melons onto the ground and imitating his blood spatter analysis. He's made to look a bit zany here, like a bit of a weirdo, but the point he's making is that the victim's heart wasn't beating by the time the body hit the ground. The killer held the body up for a significant amount of time after strangulation. That, along with the body still having monetary possessions on person, shows that the kill was absolutely not about a robbery or anything petty like that. This was a crime of passion and was likely a hate crime. So, you know, more fun stuff. Dead kids, people being killed for being gay. Oh man, just what a ball we're having. No, but like obviously this is something to kind of appreciate about the show. It's always been good at that, the original series and this one as well. It does deal with dark shit like this, but it always still somehow manages to be entertaining and not like such a kind of drag despite that, if that makes sense. I've always appreciated that about this show. Anyway, later Deborah and Sophia show up to a club called Sapphire. They dance and it's all disco-y and 90s and stuff, and I don't know, this is not a life I've ever lived, so I can't exactly relate to it, but the point is they're partying. Woo. But upon stealing forgotten expensive leftovers by a group of socialites gone off to dance and whatever, Deb's approached by a cute guy. Oh no, cute guy alert. And they hit it off, and this guy, I'm telling ya, is bound to lead to trouble. Anyway, so the guy invites Deb to go off with her, leave the club and whatever, but Deb says she can't go with him tonight because she's with her friend who she can't leave behind. So cute guy alert, oh no, leaves her his account business card and contact info. His name is Gio, by the the way. The next day, she calls Gio and he comes by in some fancy looking car with a phone attached to it, which is just kind of funny. Like, you know, obviously again, it's the 90s. So if it's a car with like a phone attached to it, that's impressive. Anyway, they end up in some penthouse place with fancy drinks or whatever and make out. And I get the sense here that Gio is not exactly as simple as he's made himself out to be. He's going to be connected to some sort of bad guy or crime later on, because she does ask him again as well what he really does like for a living, and he vaguely says he works for his dad and not much else. And I'm like, who's his dad? You know, he's definitely going to be involved in some sort of thing going on. Maybe he's got something to do with the big bad of the season or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, I also question whether or not Gio is questioning how old Deborah is. I guess in America you can drive when you're 16, as he's seen driving with an expensive car and stuff. So he might not be that much older than Deb, but he kind of seems like he is, you know? He seems like he's at least in his 20s, like mid-20s at least, I would have thought. And she's meant to be, what, 16, 17, maybe 18? It just seems kind of odd to me and was something I wanted to point out. I don't know. Anyway, later Dexter meets up with Mad Dog to go fishing on the boat and is met with the terrible news that it wasn't going to be just the two of them on this boat alone. Annoying intruders in the form of friendly family members fucks up his plan to murder him right then and there. So instead, he strikes up a conversation with Mad Dog discussing business. Mad Dog talks about how he used to work in foreclosures and never felt bad about taking people's homes away.
There's the truth and the truth.
Because the job paid for everything he has now, like the boat, his guitars, his daughter's education, etc. And that every person he foreclosed on deserved it, saying that they put themselves in that position. That kind of tells me that he really was mainly just killing like other criminals and mobster type guys, which isn't that far off from what Dexter's doing. So I'm a little bit like, hey, you know, fair game if you're killing those types. But then again, if he actually truly has killed 200 plus people, he's probably killed innocent people along the way and probably didn't care that much as he got paid for it anyway. So I don't know. Go on, Dexter. Kill him. I don't care. Anyway, Dex pushes it though when he asks where the moral line was as to who he wouldn't have foreclosed on. And the convo then also gets interrupted by the family fishing anyway, so that's the end of that. Anyway, flashback time! Flashback! Flashback Harry is now shown with Dexter after having read him a bedtime book they fell asleep where Laura Moser finds them after the night's informant job or whatever you'd call it. It's here where the affair between the two officially begins. Obviously after they leave the room with Dexter. I wrote that down like they did it right there, but no, they leave the room, then the affair begins. After some hesitation, Harry gives in and the two collapse on the couch together with the most like, this is the 90s sexy sex scene music ever. As it transitions back to present day and Dexter shows up in Mad Dog's house now, bashing him over the head with one of the guitars, knocking him out. The kill room is set up at his house with pictures of those he foreclosed on around the room. However, before he gets the chance to do the usual kill ritual, Mad Dog wakes up and erupts, attacking Dex. They get in a scuffle, but during it, Dex picks up one of the guitars off the wall to fight him off with before it all pauses as Mad Dog pleads, no, not the Clapton! And I just thought this was a funny moment. It was like this life or death situation, this dire moment, and all he could care about right then and there was like some guitar or whatever. Anyway, then Mad Dog gets out of the kill room and runs off onto the street with Dexter bolting after him before Mad Dog trips in an intersection and is struck off screen with a car, presumably being killed, but putting Dexter in a hell of a hard situation to explain. And the episode comes to a sudden hard black end right there, giving us the reason why it's titled Fender Bender to begin with its final moment as we're left wondering how, but sadly also kind of already knowing he will get out of this in next week's episode. But I do have to say that this is bound to be the start of him realizing that he's gonna have to be more efficiently knocking out his victims with what he'll later use in the M99 drug he ingests people with a syringe in the original series. I assume that's gonna be sort of introduced in the next episode or so, because, you know, he's got to have more of a precise sort of like knowing of exactly how long they're going to be knocked down and stuff. So far, he's just been knocking him out, whacking him on the head and getting lucky, but now he has to sort of like, you know, start doing a thing where he knows like, okay, this is going to knock him out for like an hour or so. You know what I mean? Anyway, as for the episode as a whole, I have to be honest, I liked it, but it was a lot of cop talk and investigation-y stuff, and I wasn't as into it as previous episodes. I know Dexter is pretty much a cop show, but it's a step above the generic ones with murder of the week plots like CSI or whatever. Dexter, at its best anyway, was always more about the real life drama, mixed in with its dark sense of humor and comedy and melodrama revolving around Dexter killing people. Yes, the cops were always a big part of it, but not always the focus. I feel like the big focus was more about Dexter and his predicaments that he found himself in. Those are the parts that really interest me, not so much like, crime scene investigation stuff. You know what I mean? And there was a lot of that in this episode. I don't necessarily think that's going to put off most fans of the show. I think most people look at Dexter as like kind of a corny cop show or whatever, and that's kind of what this was. So other people are bound to like it, but I was just a little bit less involved with this one than I was previous episodes. But I still enjoyed it overall. I really don't want to complain too much because, as always, as I say every week now, more Dexter's more Dexter. That's only a good thing. So I guess that's about all I have to say. If you're still watching, thanks so much. Before you go, please do that things, which are like, comment, share, subscribe, all that shit, and I'm outie. Goodbye.